Well, we talked about the task force meetings focusing on the Recovery Act and the middle class. What specific ideas emerged from that meeting that'll have particular relevance to families struggling at the lower end?
And I actually might commend viewers to go to the website, which is astrongmiddleclass.gov, and read the staff report from that meeting. Because in that meeting, and this gets to your question, in what we did is we wrote a paper that looked at the Recovery Act and how it might help families, both at the middle but at the lower end of the scale as well. And if you take, one of the things we did, we look at a family that's, let's say, a couple of two spouses earning around $30,000 each. I think we had we had a scenario where one earned $40,000, the other earned $20,000. The lead earner in that family loses, say, her job. You've just gone from $60,000 to $20,000. You've gone from middle class to really lower income. And we looked at the kinds of benefits that the package has in it. Unemployment insurance benefits, both an extension of those benefits so that the benefit levels themselves are higher to the tune of around $100 a month, the extension of those benefits so they last longer in a period when jobs are hard to get, but also an earned income credit, a child tax credit, a set of tax changes. The making work pay tax credit, which if one of those spouses stays employed, that would help them. So we looked at all the different pieces of the Recovery Act that help families beset by this downturn, some of whom will be low income. And we found that you could easily add $2,000-$3,000 of annual income to a family's income, and that's going to give them a big lift in times like this.
Okay. Some are concerned that the new jobs created by the Economic Recovery Act, like the green jobs, will be made available more to the newly employed, people who lost their job because of the recession, as opposed to the people who are underemployed or who have been unemployed for the past decade. What will the federal and state government do to assure that everyone will have access to those good green jobs?
Well, I think that's an important role that as you suggested, state and local agencies can play. But I think the lead has to come from the Fed. So, for example, take the green jobs piece of this. There is $500 million in the Recovery Act, $500 million for training in the Green Jobs Act. Now, the Green Jobs Act was an act that was passed in 2007, but never funded. And it has a training component that is actually quite wide open to how we implement the training initiatives that we undertake through that. And so I think if one of the goals of that is to reach out and get the very kinds of folks who are maybe more marginally connected to the job market, then we can do so. It's written with a kind of flexibility that we should be able to accomplish that.
Okay. Transparency is a mantra of the Obama administration, and taxpayers need to see where their money is going and what it's accomplishing. With respect to the Economic Recovery Act, how are we going to know whether those struggling at the lower end of the economic spectrum are benefiting for the long term? For example, are state governments going to report incomes of people who get jobs or the incomes of those who get job training?
Well, first of all, on the transparency piece of this, I agree with you that that's really of primary importance. Not only do we have to account for $787 billion that we're spending, we're trying to get out there, quickly to meet the challenge that we face in this recession, but it's a very multifaceted program. State fiscal relief, shovel-ready infrastructure, helping to rebuild school, weatherization. There's an energy piece. There's so many. Now, my boss, Vice President Joe Biden, is one of the folks in charge of implementation and oversight. And you can bet that he doesn't want to see $1 of that wasted. So the recovery.gov is, of course, the website where we're tracking that. But I think you have to be careful. It's very important to track the efficiency, the effectiveness with what we're doing to make sure that we are tracking the job creation. We believe we're going to create or save 3.5 million jobs between the implementation of this pact and the end of next year. We can't make reporting requirements too burdensome on the contractors, the agencies that are getting it. So I can't tell you just how deeply we'll be able to go in terms of collecting information. But everything I've said in terms of taxpayers getting the best bang for their buck, that's something we're obviously going to be right on top of.
Okay. At his March press conference, the president asked what would he do about a finding that 1 in every 50 children will experience homelessness in this country. He mentioned a set of policies. He also mentioned a different kind of change. And the president said, part of the change in attitudes that I want to see here in Washington and across the country is a belief that it is not acceptable for children and families to be without a roof over their head in a country as wealthy as ours.
Right.
Will the task force be a part of that change, and if so, how?
Well, it'll be a part. Certainly, the task force will be a part of that broader change that I mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation. Remember, this task force is tasked with really finding the policy glue to reconnect the economic conditions, the living standards of middle and lower income families back to the economy once the economy starts growing again. So you could do everything you want and get it all right, get the macroeconomy performing effectively again, yet families could still be falling behind. I mean, poverty was higher at the end of the last business cycle than at the beginning. I mean, let's just stop there. As the business cycle of the 2000s progressed and lots of people did very well at the top of the scale, the poverty rate actually was higher at the end of that cycle than at the beginning. So I would argue that the middle class, the reason for being of the middle class is to make those reconnections. I mean, specifically on housing, of course, we have I think a very deep, and I think it's already shown to be a effective a plan to try to stabilize housing markets. So that's obviously one of the factors behind the homelessness problem you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Tell those tuning in to this webcast, Jared, what actions and steps you recommend folks at the state and the local level do to ensure that our current economic crisis leads to fundamental change for those struggling in the middle class. What can the local folks do?
I think you start by not only logging on to recovery.gov and just learning as much as you can about what we're doing, but go to the websites of each of the agencies. That's where there's some really more in-depth information. Interestingly, our second task force meeting was a town hall meeting in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where we talked to people. It's really kind of retail politics for a bunch of cabinet secretaries, a vice president, talking to people about the kinds of challenges they were facing. I remember a small business man, who's an engineer, talking about how he could access the program. A woman who represented a transportation company from another town. And I think one of the things that people need to learn more about and can do on their own, in the spirit of your question, is how do you link up with this package? I mean, it's out there, you read about it in the newspaper, but how do you as an individual, and not just this, but also the housing package as well, some of the housing benefits as well for people who might be facing a tough situation there. Maybe it's foreclosure, people who might want to try to refinance. There are a lot of people out there who should be able to refinance to a lower mortgage rate right now, but may not know the way in. So I think some of the agency websites can help you begin to make those links, both in the sense of an actual link on your computer, but also linking up to the programs themselves.
Okay, Jared Bernstein, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.